Hey guys, this is Savannah from earthandwater.co. Today I'm here with Jessica Rom Foster, a neuroperformance coach, and she's going to help us. We're going to discuss one of my favorite subjects, the nervous system, because I have built my entire platform on anxiety and trying to figure out anxiety and trying to heal anxiety. And so the nervous system obviously directly correlates to that. So you want to start off with telling us how you got here?
Oh, yes. Um, Thank you for having me. First of all, I'm excited to be here.
Yeah.
So I was a Pilates instructor first. I'm a musical theater performer and got into Pilates um, with that. And this woman in New York was doing this Z Health for Singers workshop. And I had no idea what Z Health was. And I went and did this workshop. And in like 45 minutes, my life changed. And I couldn't tell you at that time what the heck had happened. I knew we did something with our eyes and something with my pelvis. And all of a sudden, I could sing better. And one of my chief complaints was performance anxiety. So I could, I didn't really identify as an anxious person. It's not like I had the worrying thoughts. I'm not a worrier, but my body was always kind of anxious, and I would say lurching. I would like lurch out of myself. And you put me in a high stakes situation like an audition, and all of a sudden, like I just vacate my body. And so I was always on a search to sort of figure out how not to do that. Um, and this one little workshop, like I did that eye drill before an audition the next day, and lo and behold, had like the best audition of my life. And I was like, I don't know what this is, but I need to learn more. And went in and started working with her. Um, and pretty quickly figured out there was some stuff going on in my eyes that I had no idea about. I mean, if I went to an optometrist, like you go for the DMV, my vision was better than perfect. The like, but if you'd asked me, I could have told you there was something wrong. In fact, I had said that before. Like there was just something about vision that felt weird, like it was off, but that was the best I could say about it. Turns out my eyes like were not communicating with each other. And if I'm staring at a static point like at the DMV, that's fine, but if that point were to start moving, I would be in a world of problems. um, and it just went completely undiagnosed for 35 years. And so um, yeah, so that was sort of the chief issue. And then there were all of these other things that just sort of felt like the more I got into the Z Health curriculum, the more I was like, I need to learn this. I need to for myself. But also at that point, I started working with clients and was seeing the magic of this work for pain and, yes, anxiety and emotional regulation and some of these things, but also for performance. Like, what is it you want to do? Okay, well, let's work with your nervous system and make sure it is as prepared as possible for you to be as awesome as possible. And so that got really exciting. And yeah, so I ended up going through the whole curriculum, becoming a master practitioner in Z Health. And now, yeah, apply it largely to performers and people with anxiety, depression, ADHD, and then chronic pain is always, super important to kind of work with the nervous system from that perspective as I don't belong in my body. Something is quite wrong. I have no idea what it was. And just to be clear, I had been to doctors and doctors and doctors, not just for it wasn't just the performance anxiety. I didn't feel good. There was something off. And like the only place I ever felt totally safe was in my bed, and like that's not who I was. That's not what I wanted, I had big goals and dreams. And I just kind of felt like I was swimming upstream all the time. Um and then that started to shift. And yeah, it's like my experience of life has completely shifted as a result of rehabilitating, retraining these different physical elements of my nervous system. Yeah, that's my story in a nutshell.
I relate a lot to that because I also wanted more and
Hmm.
knew I couldn't get any more in the
Yep.
state that I was in. And
Hmm.
I've had all of the different flavors of anxiety. So I definitely had the worry parts too. Um, Postpartum anxiety.
Hmm.
But what I tried to describe to people the most was that it wasn't in my head.
Uh-huh.
And that's what everybody wants to think anxiety is. They're like, it's a result of overthinking, it's a result of worrying. And even though I did have that hype in for a period of time,
Mhm.
and do sometimes, that's just normal human state, really, is to worry about things from time to time. But what I was trying to explain to people is that it wasn't in my head, it was my body. My nervous system felt like it was trying to escape from my skin, like the literal nerve, like you picture the nerves attached to the spine going, all the little wires all around.
Yeah.
And it felt like those were electric, like, which they are. It's essentially electricity. But it felt like it was trying to electrocute its way out of my skin. And so yeah, people, there's a lot of misconceptions about anxiety and the performance stuff, and it's physical just as much as it's mental, if not more so.
Well, that's kind of one of my chief phrases is that emotional pain is physical pain.
Mm.
And, when you look at it, it's a felt sensation. It is something in the body that you are feeling and experiencing. And the thought part too, like it's really interesting when you start to think about thoughts as movement or thoughts as activation. The brain the brain needs activation in order to survive. And if some part of the brain is not functioning optimally, it will sometimes become hyperactive in order to keep that energy level high enough that it stays, healthy enough to keep going. The part of the brain in the cerebellum, like that, it's in the back of the brain. It's responsible for accuracy, balance, and coordination. And one of the really cool things that's come out, fairly recently is that that's not just accuracy, balance, and coordination of movement. It is also of thought. And so when you get these looping thoughts that tend to happen, it could be a sign that your brain is seeking that level of activation, in that way. And that's so profound to me because across the board, if something happens to me physically, my rational brain is going to try and figure this out. It's going to try and say, well, this is because of this, and especially if it's something I don't understand, but it's like, well, I feel anxious, so something must be creating this. And until you understand like the physical piece of this, it goes, well, that's maybe it's because X, Y, or Z is happening in my life. Oh gosh, maybe I should really worry about this. And it's not like this is a, necessarily a conscious process,
Mm.
right? But it is trying to attach meaning to something that may not actually have the correlated meaning. Does that make sense?
Yeah, because our brains are always subconsciously scanning for threats because that's just how we're wired.
Right. We are wired for survival. Yes,
Yeah.
completely.
And which was great back in the day when you actually had to run from lions and tigers and bears and whatnot.
Right.
But nowadays it's the same process activated over traffic, or the kids screaming for too long in the house, or just the smallest of things. So we're always in this fight or flight response
Right.
these days.
Right.
You're talking about eye movements
Yeah.
that help with this. Can you take us to
Yeah.
that?
So the brain pays more attention to your eyes than to anything else. The vast majority of input that we use to move through the world safely is brought in through the eyes. And so, if there's any kind of deficit in the eyes, which I'm here to say all of us have some kind of deficit, it is magnified, I'll say, more, it can create more threat in the system, than anything else. So the cool piece of this is that in improving our vision, and vision isn't just, again, it's not just how clearly can I see something, it's how well do my eyes move. There's multiple skills involved in vision, like there's peripheral vision, there's um, being
Yeah.
able to track an object or jump my eyes to an object, look near and far, right? Like there's skills. These are neural skills that most of us don't think about. Like it's just not something my brain ever went, gosh, do I track objects well? The answer is no, in fact. But in cleaning, so these are trainable skills, which is really cool. And in training these visual skills, we I use the analogy of a threat bucket. So like you have this bucket in your brain that can only handle so much stress, right? Threat is a neuro term for stress. Um, and if that bucket fills, we end up with pain of some kind. And that pain, again, could be anxiety, it could be physical pain, it could be anything. Any physical experience I don't want to have, to me, is term pain. Um, so if we train these eyes and we improve our ability to track things, that can decrease that level of threat in the bucket significantly so that we can increase our capacity to show up for those other things in our lives that matter without stepping into anxiety, without stepping into pain of any kind. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I'm following.
Right. Yeah. So, and it's, it's still kind of brand new, right? Steph Curry, the basketball player, does some vision training and it makes him, I think, super awesome or more awesome. And then, at his skill, the eyes, like, if your eyes are not functioning optimally, your brain will put the brakes on in any way, shape, or form it can to make sure you stay safe. So the better your eyes function, the easier it is to move without the brakes coming on. So it's one of the chief things that we do, but you can look at that from pretty much any sensory input into the nervous system or even the processing of the brain, like any part of the nervous system, any improvements we make in the wiring, in the functionality of the nervous system will ultimately, again, kind of empty that threat bucket and give us more capacity to do the things we want to do in life and have it feel the way we want it to feel.
So, what are some things that we can do to improve all of this?
Yeah. Um, the simple things that I talk about, like, kind of all the time, because the easier it is, some of the things, vision training is its own thing, and brains are very unique and different in terms of what they need. But, like, kind of the lifestyle pieces of this, that the more I've learned about this, the more I'm like, gosh, our lifestyle is driving us into this full threat bucket way of being all the time, like you said, being in fight or flight all the time. Well, part of the reason is we're missing out on an immense amount of activation that when we were running away from tigers, we were getting. Like, we are wired to live in a three-dimensional world. We are supposed to be physically active, we're supposed to be, you know kind of on a lot, right? Like, we need activation in order to feel our best. So some simple ways to do this are, like, yes, I'm in this digital world now. Like, my world is right here. Everything's in front of me. My eyes often are, like, right here, or God forbid, on my phone all the time, right? Like, it's all very near. And so one of the big things I always say is look up and look out. Like, I have this big window here. I intentionally put that there. Like, it's cut so I can see the sky, I can see distance, right? Like, looking off into the distance. Distance vision actually drives parasympathetic tone. So it's the simplest way to just kind of, from through the visual system, start to calm things down. So it is interesting to me that, like, yeah, if you're looking at something up close, you're driving sympathetic tone, that fight or flight response. And the further off you look in the distance, the easier things get. So that's my biggest one, like, to the point where I have people set alarms, like, okay, every 20 minutes, I need you to look up and look out. And just, getting that daily or that regular dose, resetting in that way can go a long way. It's so simple, but it can make a huge, huge difference. Um, some of the other things, I mean, just, the easy way to do that too is, like, just get out and go for a walk, right? Like, we need sunshine. We need to be out in the physical world, moving in three dimensions. I work in a gym often, and it's just so interesting to see, like, the traditional modes of exercise are also right here, right? Like, we do these bicep curls and we're all, we're crunching and everything is, like, pulling us further in. It's like, no, 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 open. Get open, look up, look at the birds, right? Like, just participate in a physical world that is bigger than the box that we live in. So those are my two favorite ones.
Yeah, and I like those a lot because, for one, I teach yoga. So
Uh-huh.
yoga is always about opening up and looking around and looking at the sky and all of that. So I like that too. And it's expansive energy, which makes sense. I don't know how familiar you are with energy work, but it translates across all of this, and it is a expansion versus a retention. So if you're bringing that energy in closer to you, you're essentially scrunching, putting pressure on the nervous system. That makes complete sense.
Yep,
So you want
totally.
to make your
And
energy.
I always like to say like there's no bad in this, right? There are reasons to pull your energy back in. There are reasons to go internal. Um, and yeah, can you do the flexibility to move kind of in and out, right? And it can be yeah, I completely I love the energetic piece of that. That sounds really cool.
Yeah. There's also macular degeneration
Mhm.
uh, was brought to my attention recently because I mean, obviously I wear glasses and I can see up close, but I can't see far away. And that's a natural process that occurs with age for a lot of us. And there is my husband found this article that was talking about the theory that it's a use it or lose it type of situation. And
Totally.
that's the reason that so many of us experience it is because we don't take the time to look off into the distance. So ever since he brought that to my attention, I've been doing that exact thing, trying
That's
to.
awesome. And the use it or lose it is it in a nutshell. And I'm a little obsessed with macular degeneration. My mom has it. It's in our family history. According to 23andMe, I have the gene for it. So the interesting thing about macular degeneration, and I say this because again, every brain is different. Everybody's eyes are different. Um, for some people, as they age, that up close vision becomes harder, and the distance is stays okay. Um, and then obviously vice versa. Um, the macular degeneration it impacts foveal vision. So it's the thing like I'm looking at your eye right now, so my eyes are focused on your eye. If you have macular degeneration, that part would start to blur and you become more reliant on peripheral vision. What's so interesting to me is okay, let's assume I have this gene. Let's say 23andMe is correct. Um, I have all since getting into this work, some of the things I'm aware of are a hyper reliance on peripheral vision. My eyes, because they had trouble communicating with each other, had a hard time focusing on a target. I like have to train it. It's something for me. If I get lazy, it'll go away. Like I have to kind of, it's like working out, right? You have muscles of the eyes that need to be worked out. Um, so this is my little experiment with my life. Like, okay, what happens if I spend the next 30 years, you know, really training my focus vision? Will I avoid what my mom is going through now? um, and so it can become it's figuring out what your unique skill is that needs training, right? Like for some people they have a hard time with peripheral vision, and so we need to really train that and get that woken up. um, and so yes, when we're talking like globally in terms of how human beings are wired, being able to see off in the distance will help calm things down from the parasympathetic nervous system. And then there's this sort of tailored what do your eyes and your brain need? Um, and I think it's just again this piece that we didn't really know that vision is in fact a trainable skill and should be trained. We should be working our eyes out just like we're working out our glutes.
Mhm.
Um, I will say this: I just turned 45 this week, and
Happy birthday.
I, I yeah, I remember being at the DMV, or it was yeah, I had to get a new driver's license. I went to the optometrist to get the vision thing done, and she was like, they were blown away with my like better than perfect vision, and I was like, yeah, well, I do a lot of vision training, and she's like, oh, just wait till you're 40, and she like looks down, she goes, oh, you are at that point, and she goes, well, just wait till you're 45, and I was like, well, that's okay, but she wasn't wrong. Like absolutely something that happens with age, and I became a mother, and all of these stressful things. And when I'm tired or stressed at this point, my near vision starts to go. And I always say like, oh, Jessica's stressed because my food gets blurry. And I'm just like, oh no, okay. But I remember like my daughter being born 5 years ago and holding her. And I remember being exhausted and she was blurry. And I was like, no, I am not going to not be able to see my child's face when it's up close. And because I know what I know, I was like, I'm going to work on this. Right. And I can, in any of those situations, work my eyes and get my vision back to normal. So it is super empowering to be like, okay, cool. Yes, I'm 45. Yes, this is happening, but it is a use it or lose it. So if I keep using it, if I train it, right, then I don't have to lose it theoretically, which I feel like I'm winning. So it's good for me.
Yeah, eye yoga is a thing. Is that the same thing? Or not
Maybe.
the same thing? Yeah, because a lot of people, I say people, a lot of modalities, for example, may be the same thing, but they developed in separate areas, so
Yeah.
they got different names and different backgrounds or whatever. But yeah, like you're just looking in directions and practicing.
Right. And that can go a long way. I always love saying, like, most of the stuff that's awesome we figured out millennia ago, but we're just getting the science to explain why it's happening now. Like it's
Yes.
oh yeah, like if everybody just did that all the time, a lot of this would just go away. Like we wouldn't have to, yeah, do eye yoga. It's all and actually I did a face yoga program recently, and they had some eye exercises in it, and there's more coming online around it. um yeah, I'm just looking forward to see like vision training stations in the gym, like, yeah, work out your lateral rectus. It's an important muscle of the eye.
Yeah,
I That's awesome. I love that.
the term new age to describe all of these things used to drive me insane because none of it's new. Every
Right.
bit of it's ancient. Every bit of it's been around for some thousands of years. And what do you mean new?
Right.
Um, then I got older and matured and understood that what they meant was it's a new age that we're re bringing these things back to the surface because now we have the modes to learn them and make them more mainstream because beforehand we didn't have the internet, we didn't have communication. You had to wait on your newspaper to come by horse and buggy until really recently. People don't really sit and think about where we're at in history, and like we talk about it, but most of the general public doesn't actually realize how recently these developments took off and connected us. So, just the internet wasn't a thing when I was a kid.
Right.
Cell phones weren't a thing when I was a kid.
Right.
Now look, we still had phones attached to the walls.
Totally.
It's so recent. So up until we got this mode of easily communication and sharing information, you had to, for one, care enough. It had to be a problem enough in your life that you wanted to go search through thousands of books at the libraries and yada yada whatever. But before that, it was just simple farmer knowledge. We didn't really care to know most of these things. So I'm just really excited that all of these practices are coming back to surface, and because uh epigenetics, if are you familiar with that?
Mhm.
Yeah, because it's exactly what you were describing a second ago, where we have these gene markers for things, but our genes and our DNA aren't as concrete
Right.
as we previously thought they were. And epigenetics is the study of how different lifestyles and practices can either turn these genes on or off, which is exactly what you're talking about.
Well, and it's something I think about. I'm like, our languaging around genes just kind of makes me laugh a little bit. Like, I have a gene for macular degeneration. Do you? Like, how do you, like, what does that look like? Was that as someone just recently was like, I have a gene for gluten intolerance. I'm like, I don't know. Where on the gene is it? Is it really a gene for that? Or is it that you have a predisposition to a set of circumstances that may lead to this thing? Like,
Mhm.
there's just not evolutionarily intelligent to have a gene for macular degeneration. And so that doesn't. So, like, I think about it as this big, more contextual. Yeah, it is. Do I have a gene where I prioritize peripheral vision versus foveal vision for whatever that there could be absolutely evolutionary advantages for that.
Yeah.
Um, but now we live long enough that all of a sudden that's going to be costly come age 75, right? And so, okay, cool. Can we play with this then and see if there's um, a way to shift that? And I like to think absolutely. I mean, there's just the environment, and we are so plastic. We change so easily
Mhm.
that um, it's just really hard to think about it for me at this point in black and white terms like that. And so yeah, the epigenetics piece makes sense to my brain for sure. Um,
Good.
I do really like your concept of the new age being. I like that. That's landing for me. This idea that it isn't this new information, but it's a new holding of that information. And um,
And the science has caught up to make it more understandable. Whereas before, the ancients, the mystics were really esoteric in how they explain things in
yep,
analogies and stories and,
totally.
you know, m- uh, mystic things that didn't really make sense. Because, I mean, honestly, it didn't make sense until we progressed the science to, and now it's still a lot of it doesn't make complete scientific sense, but we are bridging the gap. The gap's a lot smaller than it used to be.
The gap is a lot smaller. I also think, I don't know, the more I learn, the more reverence I have for how much we don't know
Oh, yeah.
and how much we probably never will know. And
Hmm.
there's sort of this mystery piece too that, like, you know, I always say we know this much about the brain, and I know this much about what we know about the brain, and yet even with that little bit of information, I'm able to make big changes. And so it's super cool. And so the information I have, right, like I'm passionate about it, I love it. And at the end of the day, can I, sort of remember that, like, there's so much complexity to it and so many things that um yeah, that play in. And one of the chief tenets of the work I do is it's something called, like, the I call it the check, try, recheck protocol. So because the nervous system is all connected and always communicating with itself, I can tell instantaneously whether your brain liked what we did or not. And again, this idea that there's a set protocol that's going to fix everybody is proven at this point not to be true.
Hmm.
Um, in fact, there was a study that came out 2 years ago, I think. I forget the author, but they did MRIs, fMRIs on different brains, people in chronic pain. I think they had 30 different brains, all experiencing pain at that point in time. And they looked at the areas of the brain that were lit up by the pain. Not a single brain matched. It was completely different in every single person. And it's such a powerful point that, like, yeah, we have all of this science, we have all of these things. At the end of the day, it has to work for you.
Hmm.
And, like, so yeah, this check, try, recheck protocol, like, we can check something, which we could even use vision, like, how clearly can you see this? Then we try something, whatever that is, a vision drill, a tongue exercise, a breathing drill, yoga, right? Like anything. And then recheck immediately and see, did you actually improve? If so, that was an appropriate level of challenge or stimulation for you. If it was neutral, your nervous system was bored by it, didn't care. And if it got worse, then that was actually too threatening and we need to modify it or avoid it if it's something unnecessary. Um, and I love that because it allows for that which I don't understand to have an impact and play. And at the end of the day, let's just, what's working for you, that's what we're going to do. Um, and so yeah, that's super cool to me.
Yeah, everything is just about self-study and
Mhm.
self-exploration.
Yep.
It can give you a thousand tools, and there's millions of tools out there. We could talk all day about the various tools and stuff that you can try
Right.
for this problem or that problem.
Right.
And anxiety in the nervous system is probably one of the ones that has some of the most tools available.
And it
Um,
should, because there's so many things that could cause it.
mhm,
Like, what's driving your anxiety may be completely different than mine. And so, I'm glad there's that many tools out there, but then there's just this piece of it being overwhelming and it being
mhm.
like, well, where do I start? Um, and I think for me, that's why working with the nervous system in this way is so valuable, because we can literally ask your brain, like, right there. And you now have this tool to be able to check in with whatever choices you're making and see how it's impacting you.
Is this like a muscle testing?
You could totally use muscle testing to do this. Yes.
Yeah. There's a couple of different things with that one. Like you can link your fingers together and like, for people
Yeah,
who
totally.
and you can ask yourself a question and it'll be weak if it's a no or strong if it's a yes. And another one that I like even better is you you balance yourself and you check in with your standing. So you're standing there and you ground yourself, which if you're not familiar with grounding is, it's just sinking your energy and becoming hyper aware of the physical at the moment. And then you ask yourself a question and your body will lean forward slightly if it's a yes and lean back slightly if it's a no. And it's like it's super subtle. You can't see it, but
Yep.
you can feel it.
Feel it. Yeah. Um, I always use my neck range of motion.
I'm doing a video about that on TikTok, not TikTok, Instagram.
Yeah, it's my litmus test. My neck always tells me what I need to know. And it's like if you have an area of tension, you can use that. Um, yeah, there's I mean anything, right? Because it's the whole nervous system and it's all connected. I like using similar to the grounding, just the ability to take a deep breath. Like if I rate it 1 to 5, how hard is it to get air into my belly? Um, and then kind of see if that changes people. It's subtle, but people, it seems to work for people. Like they can kind of sense, yeah, that was easier, or nope, I'm tighter, I'm not breathing quite as well. So yeah, but anything that gives you that communication with your nervous system, um, in a way that makes sense to your brain, and you can start getting answers. It's really really cool.
Yeah, it's just your intuition mostly.
It is, and I think I will say something about getting objective feedback from my nervous system in that way, because I think I'm a high, we all are highly intuitive. But I identified as that, I guess, somewhere down the journey. And it was really interesting when I started using physical movements to sort of ask questions. It honed that intuition. Like sometimes I didn't always believe my intuition, or sometimes I hyper believed my intuition and I was off, and it was like, because there's conditioning that speaks to the voices sometimes. It like murkies the water around the what I hear from my intuition. And so yeah, having that objective feed bless you, that objective feedback was one more layer. And I think, yeah, help me understand what I was hearing when those voices were truly coming from my intuition and when they were coming from something more conditioned.
Yeah, like the programming, we're all
Yeah.
programmed and we all have to really recognize and remember that we've been being programmed since the day we were born. And this wasn't, well, I was gonna say it wasn't malicious, but some of it may have been coming from like the outside world and stuff. But well, more at home too. I guess it just completely depends. We'll try not to get on 8 tangents, but we're all programmed with this certain conditioning, and when you become when we come to this place where you're trying to heal and you're trying to figure out, you do have to take off all of the layers that are murking up the waters so that you
Mhm.
can see more clearly. And sometimes you can it's hard to trust your intuition sometimes when you have trust issues with yourself because of past traumas of thinking that you had it figured out and then people arguing with you about whether you have it figured out. Everybody's always wanting to argue with the decisions that we make about ourselves. And that can cause intuition trust issues. And then also just our culture is programmed to not listen to your body. You don't know your body. You can't know your body. You have to go to the doctor to know your body because the doctor knows your body. You don't know your body, and you should try this diet because this diet's the only one that's good and those diets are bad and this one's what's going to work. And like it's the truth of the matter is that going back to how much we actually know about anything can be crazy liberating because
Totally.
you can just take every bit of whatever you think of as truth and just throw it all out the window in every direction. Because at the end of the day, it does not matter. The only thing that matters is right here, right now, in this moment. How do you feel? What's working for you? What's not working for you? Period.
Mhm. It is really, really interesting. It's something I think about a lot in terms of we live in a society with other people. We're certainly, I think, in a good way, being encouraged to think of others more, to, you know, yeah, be empathetic and understand that our actions impact others, right? Like that we're all connected in this way. And at the end of the day, I think for some of us, certainly with certain programming, it's a bit of a hindrance. It's actually a bit harmful, to place that level of authority over, like the group piece of it. And now that the group is global, it's like, okay. And I realize I am but one and small, but at the end of the day, my human experience is all coming through my human physical being, right? Like, so there is no one else that could possibly know what I need. Um, and that is a level of responsibility then that I have to then take and go,
Yes.
I am running this ship. And at the end of the day, I don't have control over anyone out there or anything out there, but I do have the authority and the responsibility to manage this. And it is, it's a big ask, really, I don't know why. It seems like it should be very natural, but I don't know if it's just that it's so easy to be comfortable, and like it's life is so easy now in so many ways, right? Like we don't have to, there's no tigers. But yeah, just sort of that means then I have to maybe up level my self-care. And
Mhm.
I use that term not necessarily as rest, right? Like there's an activation that's required in order for me to be able to hear and know and act on what my body, what my brain needs, and to trust that, yeah, when I get that signal from within, that it is right. And the other thing too for me is like, if I follow that intuition and it leads me into a situation that is not what I wanted, it doesn't mean that my intuition was wrong. Like it's part of the journey. Here I am,
Mhm.
okay, I've learned from that. What's next, right? Um, but yeah, it is a big, I feel like it's a part of this new age movement, right? Like, can I this focus on self in a different way, not selfishness, but like in awareness of the responsibility I have, um, to manage myself
Mhm.
and the ripple effect that will have
Mhm.
in the community if I'm taking good care of myself.
Yeah, nobody I'm not gonna say nobody. So many people don't want the responsibility of the self-care because,
Totally.
and you're right, the self-care is not just one thing, it's 100,000 different things, honestly. Every day they change, and you have to check in with yourself and figure out what you need today. Do you need more yin energy, that's the rest and digest
Yep.
and the whatever, whatever, or do you need the more yang energy today, and which is
Yep.
the exercise, the going for the walk, the, whatever, whatever, being productive. And you just have to check in every single day. And we've been taught that we need a professional to tell us how to check in with ourselves when you don't. You, in the mornings, and that's, we're getting back to meditation, which there's a lot of misconceptions about. You don't need to sit for long periods of time trying to clear your mind. Meditation is simply getting to know yourself
Yep.
and trying to train whatever you're trying to train, whether it be your mind, your emotions, your thoughts, or your eyes, your nervous
Right.
system. There's,
Totally.
you can train just like you can do crunches and train
Right.
arms, you can train your emotions to be a little less emotional.
Right. It's funny. I was an actor. I went in to train my emotions to be way more emotional.
I feel that because I'm not a very like I wish that I could be very high energy and stuff, but I'm
Yeah.
just a very low vibe person all the time.
Yeah. No, it's so true. And I think, oh, what was I going to say? I'm thinking about the emotions now, the different, oh, presence. I think at the end of the day, for me, it comes back to presence. And yeah, I mean, I had a beautiful meditation practice for years, like, had my beads and sat on the cushion, and I did that thing for a long time. And I noticed at some point, and it had benefits. I'm not going to downplay that. Like, I was able to really start to choose to think or not think. Um, but it didn't translate to walking out into the world. And I started noticing that, where it was like, huh, I feel like I have this deep, rich inner life, so long as no one is around me. And then, like, okay, how do I translate this into I want to feel like this no matter what.
Mhm.
And I moved to New York at that point, and like, I think that was my spiritual journey, was to like find it in the midst of total chaos.
Mhm.
And and it was great. It was exactly what I needed. And at the end of the day, all of the nervous system work that I do is designed to bring us into the present moment and to feel safe in the present moment. So I'm not trying to lurch out of it. So I can, can I smell what I'm smelling? Can I see what I'm seeing? Can I be in my own skin, comfortably, and then be able to choose whatever happens next.
Mhm.
But yeah, I
That
like
is
meditation.
that is literally all of the work, no matter what it is you're trying to heal or do.
Yep.
100% is just being aware in every moment that you possibly can. We're not always going to be aware. That's just who we are as people. People are just like that. We get distracted, sometimes we glaze over, sometimes we disassociate. It's fine. But uh, coming back to the moment, the awareness, we're like, oh, hey, this is going on. Okay, pause
Uh-huh.
and then analyze and try to like, okay, do I have any tools for this? Are there tools? Can I remove myself from the situation for 3 minutes? Can I go lock myself in the bathroom so I can think for a second
Yeah.
and breathe? Or can I step outside so I can think for a second and breathe and just come back to that intentional purpose? Okay, what are my goals? What am I trying to do? Look, whatever it is, just like just like you're training your mind and your body, you're training your habits as
Hmm.
well in every moment. And absolutely, it's super easy. It's not super easy. It's relatively more easy to do these things when you're by yourself, but if
Uh-huh.
you're with other people, that's the real challenge. That's where the real power is. If you
Around your family. Mm.
oh, that one specifically, right?
Oh, hello, all of my things. Yeah, totally. there's something there's something I was going to say about brains with what you were just saying.
Neuroplasticity.
And I think it was something about that. My brain just kind of, I think I was thinking about parenting,
Mm,
and this idea that it was, oh, and the habits. Yeah. Neuroplasticity, right? Like, so in every moment that I'm choosing something, I am literally changing my brain with
mhm,
the thought that I've had, with the action that I've had. Um, and again, bringing it back to that level of responsibility, then, like, huh, this is impacting me. This choice that I'm making is impacting me. Is this going to lay the hard wire of my brain, literally,
mhm.
so that it makes it easier for me to do the things I want to do, or harder?
Yep.
And because habits are, they that is what we do. We create habits, and some of them serve us, and some of them don't. um and I think that awareness for me has been helpful in beefing up that responsibility piece. Like, I think about posture all the time, and I think because I had the visual issues, or the vestibular, the inner ear issues, right? Like, posture is like 90% set by the eyes, and the inner ear. So if those aren't functioning well, it's really easy to lose that stability through the midline. And I, since being in this digital world even more, like I'm on my phone, like it's becoming apparent to me that I am creating changes I don't want to see in my posture. And this is something that, like, I know that good posture drives health and wellness. Like if you scrunch this area, you are scrunching everything that keeps you alive. And
Mhm.
so, um, yeah. So anytime I am slouching or, and I'm not saying don't relax, but there's this, if I'm in the turtle position, as I call it, right? Like, okay, what, yeah, the level of responsibility then to do something about it.
Mhm.
Because the longer I stay in that position, the easier it's going to become to stay in that position.
Mhm.
Um, and the harder it will be to lengthen up and find that long spine. And then, yes, I'm grateful I have the neural tools to help with those higher order things so that it makes it easier to stay in that position. Um, but yeah, the habits and the neuroplasticity, and um, that's really cool. The parenting piece I was thinking about is you were talking about taking 3 minutes in the bathroom, and
Locking yourself in the closet.
totally, totally. I live in a tiny house, so it's kind of it's just kind of a bit like, all right, mommy's not acting the way I want mommy to act right now. So hold on, like, give me a minute so that we can get back to where I think this would feel better, and yeah, that freedom to be able to say that, to be like, huh, I am out of control. This is, I need to reset. Give me a second. And my daughter at this point gets that. Like, I'm so glad I can be able to model that for her. So it's not, don't lose it. Don't get angry. No, get angry. It's okay. That's totally normal. But manage it. And that's pretty cool. That's a pretty cool concept.
It is. We have to be able to be honest with our kids. And that's been not the cultural norm for any amount of time. Like, as far as I can tell, it's pretty new to be honest with your kids about how you're feeling and how your emotions are doing and whatever. So there's no wonder that the vast majority of us have no emotional regulation. We have no idea how to manage our anger or our anxiety or our fear or nothing,
Yeah.
because it was always hush, hush, shoo, shoo. And especially, I bet living in a tiny house, you can't escape. So I've always been very candid with my children. I'm like, okay, look, I am having a lot of struggles right now. My energy feels like it's trying to escape, and I really don't know how to explain it to you other than I just need some space for a second. Can you give me 5 minutes to like not talk? Can you give me 5 minutes? Like, just go, I don't know, play with the cat for a moment. There's, and then that's the modeling behavior that is teaching them how to regulate their emotions. So if you're growing up as a child in a situation where everyone's always screaming, having meltdowns, crying, and everything just kind of gets uh more escalated rather than brought back down, because we live in an egocentric world and the ego makes it really hard for us to be like, hold on, wait a minute, I'm having a hard time. This isn't going how I want it to go. Let me like pause for a second so I can rework this. But just modeling that behavior when, so like I yell in front of my kids and people be like, can you calm down? And I'm like, no, they need to see that it is normal to be outraged by certain things.
Yes. This is not okay. Do not think that this is okay.
No, we're not sweeping this under the rug.
Right.
Like it's fine, because then when they have meltdowns, they don't beat themselves up about it, or it doesn't escalate and they don't get, whatever. There's 1,000 different ways that we could handle that situation if we're not taught how to model it appropriately, which means processing it openly.
Yep. Yep.
I just need to cry for a minute.
Yep.
I will be okay. I just need to cry for a minute.
Yep. Yeah, totally. No, it's been, I I'm pretty excited by this. You know, like I like, because I don't think emotion. I didn't come into parenting with it. Well, I was not taught emotional regulation.
Me neither.
So I don't think any of us were in our generation. Like it just wasn't, we were, the world was not there
Nope.
yet. um, and so it's almost like I'm learning this with my daughter in a way.
Yep.
And I'm glad that I'm an older mom. I'm glad I had the time I did to sort of, you know, do my work and figure out some of these things. And my hope is, I mean, I know it's happening because she'll say things like, okay, I'm crying now, mommy. And I'm going to cry for a few more minutes and then I'm going to stop. And I'm like, okay, like, great. Um, and, just sort of, but my hope is that, yes, in the blundering methodology of my attempts at, co-regulation and mirroring and all of these things, that we are we are passing the torch for future generations to do it even better.
Yeah. That's all
Yeah,
we need, any of us can hope
that's
for.
all we can do.
It
Exactly.
is. And, we put so much pressure on ourselves, especially when you show up online like this. Everybody wants us to be picture perfect. We ourselves want us to be picture perfect. And if you mess up at all, it's like the end of the world, cancel culture. Oh, but we're all fumbling through life. We're free falling. We jumped out of a plane the moment we were born, and we have
Yeah.
been free falling, trying to figure out how to pull our parachute, and there's holes all in the parachute, and we're doing what we're doing every day until we hit the ground, and then we're dead. So
I
as
love
long as you're
that
not dead
analogy.
yet. Yeah, there was a quote you had over here, or what was it? Um, if you're not dead yet, you're not done yet.
Yes, right.
Yeah. I mean, like you wake up every day and like things are chaotic and overwhelming and anxiety inducing and but we're not dead yet, so just got to keep on keeping on, making the best of
Yeah.
the situation as we can.
And then, yeah, learning the tools that make it manageable and
Mhm.
as enjoyable as is possible.
Yep. Which means taking everything a little bit lighter. We grew up in I think it was probably the Puritan foundation that the country was founded upon over here. But it's kind of like that across the board though. It's other cultures too, not just ours, that is puts um a lot of focus on being perfect and what the cultural norm ideals are and fitting into these boxes. And I think we're just now starting to loosen up a little bit and realize that like we're killing ourselves with stress trying to
Mm-hmm.
fit into these boxes and be perfect when nothing is and no, or will ever be. So it's all chaos and it's all more or less it's dumb, but it's not dumb. Like it's just it's that healthy balance between the Buddha mentality and like the fart jokes, like I, if that makes sense. Like everything matters, but also nothing matters. And if we can just find that happy medium of balance in
Right.
between it all, to where we're just doing our best in every moment and taking it lightheartedly and trying to have fun as much as we can along the way, that's all we can
Yeah,
do.
I like the idea of, right, always the 30,000-foot view and sort of that observer role. And if I can stay to the degree that I can stay there, then yeah, I can choose whatever response I want, whether it's humor or love or, something maybe even lower vibration if I want, but like there is what is, and then there's how I show up to what is. And um yeah, like you're right. At the end of the day, we all hit the ground. So like, what do you want to do? Just, I'd like
Yeah.
to fly, like just, or not, if I can't fly, at least enjoy the ride down. Like, it's pretty cool in and of itself.
Yeah, my husband used to get all bent out of shape when like, we have two kids, but three in the house and animals. And for example, he'd be all bent out of shape because someone colored on the wall. And I mean, shrug, it's all going to burn down eventually anyway. Really, what does it matter? Can we
Can't
not
always
do that
remember.
again though? But
Yeah,
what,
right, right.
let's not do it
Please
again.
don't color on the walls and okay.
But we're also not going to flip out about it or
Right,
make it big because it's as big as you choose it to be.
totally.
So,
Yes.
if we're constantly making the little things big, then we have no room for the things that are big.
It's just
So
exhausting.
it is absolutely a train wreck. That's okay. So you want to tell people how they can find you and what you have to offer them as far as services and whatnot?
I'm very active on Instagram. I love sharing the tips and tools and how they work in the world. They're all really weird. I always say it's weird, but it works. So just kind of putting it out there visually, I think is fun. So definitely Instagram. My website, theneurologypresence.com, has um, currently a lot of words on it. So if you want a lot of information, it's all there on how this works and what it is. In terms of services, I have a couple things I suggest for people. One, I do free explorer sessions. So if you want to come try this work on, this work, you have to experience it. It's not like it's almost inexplainable because everyone responds so differently to it. So the free explorer sessions, you can sign up for on my website, and I'll walk you through how this works, tailor it for your nervous system, and then we can talk about how to implement it into your life. I do private coaching. I have a couple. We just started a couple months ago this brain boost daily brain boost club that's been so fun. We've been meeting every morning at 7 a.m. I think that's going to change though because we're all like, I think it might be a 9 a.m. starting in February. We'll find out. But that's a really fun way to sort of try it on for a while and see the impacts of it. And it's a really great group of people. So that, if you're interested in that, you can shoot me an email at neurologyofpresence@gmail.com, or send me a message on Instagram. But yeah, there's a lot in the works. Part of my goal with my business side of this is like the private coaching and tailoring it for the individual is awesome and where the magic can really happen quickly.
Mhm.
Um, but a lot of this is sort of what we've talked about, like how do we get maintenance? How do we get the neural self care, or the neural hygiene, as I call it, into our daily routines? And so I have several programs I'm kind of in development around to sort of serve, a broader community, at a more accessible, make it more accessible.
Okay.
So yeah. Oh, and my newsletter, that I think is, if you want to hop on that there's a link on Instagram and on my website. Um, but I love talking about this, and so yeah, every week there's a juicy newsletter article that comes out.
Cool. And I'll make sure that all that gets linked nearby so that nobody has to search too far.
Oh yes, thank you so much. Perfect.
So thank you so much for being here with us today.
This is wonderful. Thank you, Savannah.